Hi, Stitchers. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, where we share conversations about Palestinian embroidery. I'm Amani here with my co-host Lena, chatting with talented embroiderers and artists, sharing their stories, inspirations, and the cultural significance behind their work.
On today's episode, we're chatting with Eman, a Palestinian Tatreez artist, teacher, and business owner living in San Diego. She honors Palestinian embroidery through her brand, Hint of Tatreez, through apparel, Tatreez kits, and so much more. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, Eman. We're so happy you could join us today.
Thank you for having me. I love your podcast, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! Thank you for the support. We love everything about you, so we're glad you're here too.
Thank you.
So Eman, we would love to start by getting to know a little bit more about you. Can you share with our listeners you and your family's connection to Palestine?
Yeah, of course. So I am fully Palestinian. Both my parents are Palestinian, but they grew up both in Jordan. As you know, like that's very typical for many Palestinian families not to actually grow up in Palestine. But yeah, I'm very much Palestinian. Grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, and I lived in Jordan for a while as well. Visited Palestine once in my life when I was about 17 and loved it. Have been wanting to go back ever since. But yeah, my whole family's Palestinian. We're from Mizrah Sharqiyya, which is like Ramallah area. Mm-hmm. So we're like considered falahis, I guess.
Why do you say that like it's a bad thing?
No, I don't. Wait, hold on.
I'm teasing.
No, but I say that because we are considered falahis, but because like my parents, like I said, grew up in Jordan and I lived in Jordan, we don't have like the falahi accent. So
yeah, I hear you.
When I speak Arabic, they're like, why do you speak with the ka? You're speaking with the cha. And I'm like, leave me alone. So that's what I mean. But I love, like, I'd rather be falahi than... I don't want to hate on anybody, sorry.
Yeah. Change the subject.
Next question.
Moving it along.
But yeah, we're Palestinian through and through, very much like no questions about that. Grew up like, you're not, even like saying Palestinian American was like, no, you're just Palestinian, so...
Yeah, no, and actually, Eman, so for our listeners who don't know, we've actually met in Brooklyn, and you come from like a really actually like quite large and beautiful Palestinian community in Brooklyn. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more about like growing up in such a like just lovely community outside of Palestine in the U.S.?
Yeah, so I grew up in Bay Ridge, and if you know, Bay Ridge is like little, like it was overtaken. It was like overtaken by Arabs. And I'll be honest, when I lived there, because I grew up in Sunset Park and then I moved to Bay Ridge when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12. So I grew up there like my teenage years and I really took it for granted. I will be honest, like I was like, I don't know, like being around, Arabs all the time as a teenager and like having to navigate that, like, kind of, I didn't appreciate it as much as I did when I got older, and especially when I moved from Bay Ridge. Like I miss it a lot. I miss that like vibrant Arab community. And one thing that was like really hard when I moved, so I live in San Diego now, and the specific neighborhood that I live in is like very much no Arabs here. All the Arabs are related to my husband. Like, so they're all family. Yeah. But coming here and living somewhere where there was not as much of a community, it's like I always felt like I had to explain myself or like prove myself, or I like stood out in some way. And in Bay Ridge, it's not like that. Like everyone's dealing with the same thing. Everyone has the same experiences. So you feel very much like you fit in. Even if you live there and you're not Arab, like you're so used to it that it's just like that feeling of never having to like prove yourself or explain yourself, where it was very like culture shock when I moved, and I didn't have that anymore. And I'm really glad that I still have that community in Bay Ridge, and I have my friends and I visit often. But yeah, it was something that was hard to deal with after I moved.
Yeah.
Sure.
Are you finding your community in San Diego slowly, especially through Tatreez?
Yeah, for sure. When I first moved here, my sister moved also shortly after, like a few months later. So I kind of clung on to like, I have my sister here, and I clung on to like, my husband's family, and I love that. Like I love and am very much grateful that I still have a community here, but I don't know how to explain it. It's like growing up in a community that's like all different families, all different, Arab population. The community is just built in. Like everyone like knows each other, everyone knows of each other, and you feel this sense of like belonging that is different than just having your family around. Obviously with family you feel a sense of belonging as well, but it's just hard to explain. And I felt like the first few years I was here, I wasn't really putting an effort into like finding a community or making friends or anything, because like I said, I had family, so I was like, that's enough. But after a few years, I really was like craving that. And I remember, was it like 2 years ago specifically, like right after COVID and the whole lockdown, I really missed like that feeling of like belonging. Like we know each other, like we might not, be friends, but I know you, you know me. Oh, I know that you're gonna know this person, and you're gonna know like, I don't know how to explain it. If you live in a community like that, you kind of just like know that feeling of like walking down the street and like feeling like you belong versus not having that. So I had to actively work on that, and Tatreez was a big part of that, which I'm so grateful for. And I have noticed a difference even just in the past year or two, where I've been like actively, searching for community, because like I said, I took it for granted growing up in a community that I didn't even have to, try. It was just there, like down
It was
the street.
built in.
It was built in. And when you don't have that, you really have to work for it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm sure this is all going to come out just naturally through our conversation, but why don't we start with how you came into Tatreez to begin with? Would love to hear your journey.
Yeah, so my journey with Tatreez kind of takes a few turns. And to talk about my Tatreez journey, I also have to talk about my like sewing journey and just craft journey in general. So I started teaching myself how to sew when I was around 18, 19 years old. I picked up a sewing machine and I just like decided to teach myself. And I would like watch YouTube videos and like watch all these tutorials, like absorbed it as much as I could, and eventually just taught myself. So I had that experience already of like if I want to learn something, I can go ahead and do it without, finding someone to teach me or take a class or something in person like that. And through my like sewing journey, I had done Tatreez in the past as a kid. When I went to school in Jordan, they had us do a little bit, but I don't count that because I didn't retain any of that information.
Yeah.
And I completely abandoned, like I just have a vague memory of like stitching like my name or something in Arabic. But yeah, after I started learning how to sew, I was like, why don't I learn Tatreez too? And so I naturally went on YouTube like I did with sewing, and I started looking up like Tatreez tutorial, this, that, and I couldn't find, like this was what, like 12 years ago, I couldn't find anything except one person. Oh my God, I'm blanking on her name.
Roba.
Roba, yeah.
Yeah.
And like Roba Yusuf. And I know her name, by the way. I just, like when I'm on camera, I'm like,
You're good, babes. You're good.
But yeah, Roba's videos, and I know, Amani, you mentioned, I think also that you learned from her, and they were all in Arabic, and thankfully I speak Arabic, so I understood. Yes. And also if you don't, like, just seeing it on the screen, you can kind of get what she's saying.
Yeah, that's right.
But I watched like every single one of her videos, and I learned a lot about just like the actual technique and the how-to of Tatreez.
Yes.
And then from there, I did like my first little project. And I, again, kind of like abandoned Tatreez. Like I would go back and forth with it, but I was very much into sewing and like the sewing community. And like my dad would go to Palestine and come back and bring me like Ida cloth, waist canvas. And I remember he brought me those like pre-printed
Yes.
Ida cloths.
I already know what you're talking about.
And this one was like a woman sitting against a tree or something, like a woman with a veil sitting. And I was like, cool. So I started stitching that, and I like would take it with me to the park and like stitch it and things like that. Like
Did you stitch it while laying under a tree?
I was the girl in the picture. I was against a tree.
Vibes.
I was in Central Park against a tree, stitching away.
Love that.
But I never finished it because I am also a chronic like start a project, never finish it, girl.
Girl.
It's all right.
You are in good company. Good company. Yeah.
But yeah, so I went back to Tatreez here and there. But like I said, it was very much like deep into sewing and like making clothes and learning all about that. And then come quarantine, again, all goes back to 2020.
Yeah.
During that lockdown, I just started picking up Tatreez again, like more frequently. Then I got pregnant, and when I gave birth, having a newborn at home, living in like, a small apartment, I had absolutely no interest in sewing anymore. Like, because it's, you gotta lay out the fabric and just be cutting away with the sewing machine is loud. And like having a baby and doing that was really hard. Whereas Tatreez was like very much meditative. I would like, he'd be like sleeping next to me on the couch or something, and I would just be stitching. Put him down to sleep. I'd just sit on the couch, relax, and stitch. So it just naturally came back into my life without me really like thinking about it. It just was like a very natural progression. And one thing that, speaking about community with the sewing world, the sewing community, when I started sewing, I had an Instagram, and, I would share the things I made, and I tried to like be a part of, like, I really wanted to be part of community. Like, I was always used to being part of community. And so I tried to, like, get that with sewing. And I met a lot of wonderful people through that community, and there is a lot of good. But I just felt like this is a community that is not very, I don't know, like, they also don't get me.
Yeah.
And
they're still explaining that you have to do about who you are.
Yeah, and that also became obvious with everything that's going on, since October in Gaza, became very obvious. And I know that's not what I'm here to talk about, but it was just very, like I said, the journey with Tatreez like came back naturally into my life, and it just solidified for me in the past few years. Really learning the history, because that's also something I did in the last few years. I was like, okay, I know the techniques, I know all the sizes of the thread and the fabric, and I know this, I know that, like I know where to get patterns, I know how to make patterns. What does it mean? Like I knew the basics of like, the cultural significance of Tatreez, but I really wanted to like take it more seriously and learn, about the different regions, about what the different colors mean, how Tatreez has like progressed through times and through different periods of time. And so in doing that, and in like growing, like finding my Tatreez community, like including you guys, and all the wonderful people that I've met, it just felt like a bigger sense of belonging. And so that kind of just solidified for me that, this is what I am meant to do. And finding that, I went into sewing because it was kind of like a need at the moment. Back then, there wasn't like as many modest options for clothing and like specifically dresses. So I remember I specifically wanted to make dresses, which I did a lot of. But as the years went by and like, alhamdulillah, like the modest options are like easier. I'm like, I I don't really feel like that same sense of like, why am I doing this?
It's not
And I
pulling
didn't,
you in
yeah,
as much.
I still enjoy doing it, and I still implement sewing in like a lot of my, like my crafting, but now it's more with like Tatreez, you know? I Tatreez everything that I make now.
Yeah.
So just having that purpose of like, why am I doing this? What is so important? Because I could just go out and buy clothes. Like it's, you know what I mean? And feeling like I didn't have that anymore, and especially seeing how like that community generally ignored a lot of things that were happening in the world, just because of the majority of like the people that make up that community, versus like with the Tatreez community. Again, I keep saying like I don't have to explain myself. I'm there. I'm part of it. It's a community with a purpose, and for me, like I feel like that's all I need to like keep my interest. And once I figured that out, over the past few years, like it has never left me. And it's just one of the many crafts that I've tried that has stuck. And I think it's because it combines all of like my identity, all of my interests into one thing. You know, I love making, and I'm Palestinian. Like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, and it came so naturally, like you said, like the progression of bringing it back to your life came so naturally. And, you know, as we have had other conversations, your ancestors are definitely pushing through as you stitch. So it's definitely a big part of you for sure. One thing I wanted to touch on too about community, specifically Tatreez community. So I know in San Diego, you are hosting workshops, you are hosting Tatreez gatherings. So you are actively, as you said, like you are actively searching for community, but you're also building community. Can you tell us a little bit about the community that you've been working to build over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I have always like in my head wanted to do a Tatreez circle, but if you know me in person, I can be very I wouldn't say shy, but I hesitate to reach out to people because I don't ever want to feel like I'm like bothering someone, or like, you know, I always have in my head like, oh, if I don't know, like they probably don't want to, so I'm just not gonna say anything. But I met my friend Lena, not this Lena, but another San Diego Lena. I met her through Instagram, excuse me, and we were like following each other. And it turns out that I saw her one day at like Eid prayer, and turns out we live basically in the same neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, we should hang out and everything. She does Tatreez. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, she's a Tatreezer as well. And so she had reached, like, I literally was thinking it, like, I want to do a Tatreez circle. And then, like, 2 or 3 days later, she texted me or messaged me, and she's like, how do you feel about doing, you know, a Tatreez circle in San Diego? And I'm like, you literally read my mind.
Love it, love it.
So we got together and we talked, like, how are we going to do this? We did our first circle, like, the next month. We've done a few ever since. And then we kind of, you know, we both got busy. I was traveling, she was busy. And then just life got in the way. So we haven't done one in a while, but we're actually meeting soon to talk about another one. But yeah, through the Tatreez circles, I found that the issue, or not issue, but the thing that we ran into is that we had people wanting to do Tatreez. So they would come to the circle wanting to learn. And, you know, with the Tatreez circle, as you know, it's generally meant for people who already embroider. Yeah. So we did like teach here and there, but we had a hard time getting people that already knew Tatreez and had projects. So I work with House of Palestine, which is a nonprofit, excuse me, here in San Diego. They're in Balboa Park. They're part of like the International Cottages. So it's really cool because Balboa Park has cottages, which are like basically like mini museums for a bunch of different countries. And House of Palestine opened 2, 3 years ago, but they have been working towards building it for the past like 20 years. They had to go through a lot to actually get it like official and to physically build the house. And so when they opened, they, like I said, I like know people that work there and like always attend their events and things like that. And they were like, we want to host like classes and things like that. So what do you think about doing a workshop? I was like, perfect. Yeah. So I did my first workshop. It went really well. And I was like, this is what I need to build community, to give back to my community, because I had no idea that so many people wanted to learn. And I was like, of course they do. Like I tried so hard to learn when I was, younger, and it was so hard for me to find resources, and like now there's so many, and there was nothing really like that here in San Diego as far as I could tell. So I of course did the workshop, started growing little by little, and now I'm doing monthly workshops that like each one focuses on a different topic, like a different theme, because with Tatreez I really wanted to make sure, especially with these times, that people are learning the importance of Tatreez, the history of Palestine, while also stitching, because, if you are just stitching just for fun, of course, like Tatreez and crafts can give us what we personally need. But at the same time, with Tatreez and any cultural craft, you really have to make sure that you're learning the history and the importance, and doing your best to learn and advocate for whatever culture that you're working with. So with Tatreez, I was like, for me, there is so much to learn about Tatreez that you can't do it all in one sitting, one workshop. There is so many different paths that you can take, like Tatreez, like as a form of resistance, like the colors mean something, the different regions have different styles, and it all connects back to the history of Palestine, to the land. And I thought, what better way to myself learn more about Palestine and the culture while also teaching others. So it's been really fun for me to, one, build that community. It's growing each time I do a class, it's growing more and more, because you get these wonderful students that come and they are so excited. A lot of people come alone, so they end up making friends at the workshops, which I love. Yay, yeah. I prefer when people come alone as opposed to like bringing their friends, if I'm being honest. But I love when they make friends. And then at my last workshop, someone was like, let's start a WhatsApp group, and she was like starting, and I was like, I have one, like you guys can all join it. So we're growing more and more. So with the workshops growing and, getting as many people to embroider as I possibly can, the circles I can also see them growing, the community is growing, more people learning about Tatreez, talking to their friends about it, teaching it, and gaining their confidence at the same time. And that's literally all I can ask for and more. So it's been wonderful.
Amazing job. Yeah, we're so proud of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And actually, I have a piggyback question that kind of ties all the work that you're doing with the classes, but then also your own experience learning sewing in particular. For a listener who maybe hasn't started Tatreez and, maybe they don't have an in-person, maybe they don't have you, Eman, next to them, maybe they're not in San Diego. What exactly was the drive behind you just doing it? How did you get yourself to do that for the first time? Because like you mentioned before, once you kind of do it, you build up that confidence, and everything else that you do just kind of comes, it's something that you're excited about. It's not something that you're anxious to try. But for that first time, do you have any advice for our listeners?
Honestly, just do it. I know that's the most basic advice anybody can give, but I'm someone that tends to overthink and over-research whenever I want to do anything. Most recently, I've been wanting to learn knitting and crocheting, and I did all this research, watched all these videos, did all the things, and it wasn't until I actually picked up like the yarn and the needles and did it, that I was like, I actually don't like this. It's not for me.
I had the same experience.
Yep.
And I just stopped. But it was the same thing with sewing. I was lucky because the minute that I got it in my head that I wanted to learn how to sew, my dad is a chronic collector of things. That's a nicer way of saying a hoarder. I love you, Yaba, if you're listening. But I literally went into the basement. I was like, we probably have a sewing machine here. And I found one in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
I think we had 3. So I found one and I was like, great. I went to my kitchen. I set it up on the dining table. I took, I think I had like a shirt and then like I took 2 shirts that I had and cut them and then reattached them together just to like practice. And that was all I needed to give me like that boost of confidence that like I can do this. And if I could do that, if I could figure out how to take apart a piece of clothing and put it back together, you know, I can make something from scratch, which I started doing. So with Tatreez, it was the same thing. I'm like, if I can figure out how to sew, if I can look at a piece, you know, I didn't have classes. I didn't really, the tutorials kind of came a little bit after I tried it myself. But I was like, if I can just figure it out just from looking at what it is, like taking a piece of Tatreez and just inspecting it, that's all I need. So I encourage anyone who wants to try any craft, like, do not overthink it. Don't feel like you need to wait for the perfect class to come along. I mean, sometimes there are classes and they're expensive. Maybe they're out of the way. You don't have time. Just do it. And if you want to do it in a way that you're not wasting money, maybe you don't know if you're going to keep up with this craft, thrift shops are a great place to find basically most of the crafts that you are interested in. But if we're talking specifically sewing or Tatreez, thrift shops, you can usually find fabric. I have found like embroidery floss in like giant bags at like my
I've
local
heard
thrift
about
shops.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I'm never that lucky.
Yeah. They're usually like the cheaper brands, but still, I mean, if
It's
you're
good
just
to
getting started,
practice.
it's good to practice. Also, I know like my community, like my neighborhood here has Buy Nothing groups.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
on Facebook, and I know that they're like nationwide, I think. But you can try to find like your local like, you know, group on Facebook that gives things away. Like I said, Buy Nothing. When I wanted to learn how to knit, I literally just went on there and I was like, I want to learn how to knit. Anybody have like supplies they're giving away? And someone just gave me a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, wow.
I tried it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I put it back in the group. And someone else tried it.
Exactly.
I passed it along. So yeah, don't be afraid to just start. Ask questions. If you go on Instagram, you can find literally hundreds of people doing Tatreez now. And I find that like the community is very willing to share. You know, they're excited to teach. So there's a lot of ways to get started. And just do it. Don't overthink it. If you have like 10 minutes in your day, just like go for it. And if you like it, great. There's so much that you can do with it. And if you don't, you know, it's not always for everybody. Some people just don't vibe with like certain crafts, and that's okay too. It doesn't make, if you're Palestinian, it doesn't make you any less Palestinian. Like, you can still appreciate it in your own way, but just try it out, and I promise you won't regret it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I am somebody who I believe in classes. I love taking classes, but also like just do it and practice and take videos or watch videos, ask, because I agree with you, Eman. Like, I feel like the community is very supportive. As like Tatreez is a community art, and traditionally that's what it was. It was passed down, you know, within families, within villages, within communities. So I think we're all very willing to help. But I also encourage people to take classes, because Eman, to your point about learning the history and stuff, I think that's important. I mean, I've been stitching for years, and I'm taking Lina's Stove class, so, and I still love signing up for classes. But I think it's a nice way to build community too.
Of course. And that's the thing with Tatreez is that there is so much to learn and so much to teach that you never know it all. Like I've been doing Tatreez for, like I said, 12 or so years now. And I don't consider myself an expert. Even though I teach it, I tell my students, like, I am still a student of Tatreez as well. And I'm learning as I'm teaching. Every time I teach a workshop, I learn something new. And that just makes me a better teacher and embroiderer. But I don't think that I'll ever consider myself like an expert, quote unquote, because there's no such thing. There is so much background, and a lot of it is not like documented. A lot of it is having to rely on like your elder Palestinians to teach you. And my dream is literally to go back to Palestine and learn from the women there.
We're gonna do it, girl.
Yeah. Yes.
That's gonna be a retreat.
I would love that. But yeah, there's always so much to learn. So if you do have a chance to take a class, if you find an online class, if you find in person, anything, I encourage always going circles. They're not meant to like be teaching spaces necessarily, but you still learn a lot because you're talking. Yeah, you're talking to each other, and you're saying like, "Oh, I learned this, and my grandma told me this," and you're always gonna learn something. But when I go back to just doing it and like trying to teach yourself as well, I think that's a good way to also gain confidence in like your ability to do things, because I find that a lot of times with my students, when I'm teaching like a workshop, I don't know how to explain it, but they are very much like, what are the rules? Like they want to know how do you, what's the, what do you do after this? How do you get this to be done? Is this allowed? Can I do this? And I'm like, you just have to, I instead of giving them a straight answer, like I'll get the question a lot, like, okay, I did this section, the red. What should I do next? Should I go to the black, or should I go to the, yellow or whatever? And instead of telling them like, go to the black, I tell them, okay, this is how you want to think about it, because you're going to leave this workshop and you're going to pick out your own patterns. You're going to pick out your own projects to do. Maybe you're going to create your own patterns. You have to rely on your own ability to make decisions sometimes. And like I said, there's such a vibrant community that you can go out and ask questions. But I truly think the best way to learn is to try it yourself, and to kind of like, especially with clean backs, it's like such a thing. And I tell my students all the time, like, it's not necessarily that you have to do it that way. A lot of them think it's like a rule, and I'm like, it's not. Try to look at it as more of a meditative practice, and a way to take a step back and slow down and appreciate the process and not rush it, because my messiest backs are when I just want to get something done. Like, I want the end result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not the point. Of course we end up with a beautiful piece at the end, but a lot of Tatreez is like the process. And same thing with sewing. I would rush it a lot because I just wanted to get it done and have something to wear, and it would fall apart like 2 weeks later. So for me, it's explaining to people why they're doing certain things. And I find that when you challenge yourself to learn on your own, you answer a lot of those questions on your own, because you don't have someone just telling you, do that way, So for me, it's like a great way to build confidence is to just go out and try different things while also learning from your community and absorbing as much knowledge as you can. So
Yeah. And there's also multiple ways to do a lot of this too. It's not like if you do the black first, you have to do the red second. That's not like that's not at all how
There's
it works.
no one way.
And when I started Tatreez, I thought if I didn't do something the right way, like I was offending.
Like disrespecting your
I'm
ancestors.
disrespecting my ancestors. And like actually what was really cool is, so my grandma, Allah yarhamha, she was an embroiderer, and she wasn't able to like necessarily teach my mom, but she made a lot of things. And when I started getting more and more into Tatreez, my mom started giving me like things that my grandma made. She's like, you know, you would appreciate it. And yeah, it's like I cherish them. But I look at her work, and like I said, she was doing Tatreez her whole life. Like she's an ancestor, you know?
Yeah.
And I would inspect it and I'm like, oh, like she made a mistake here. That's missing a stitch. That stitch is off. Like
not you dragging your grandma.
No, it was like I felt so connected to her because I'm like, I'm here like trying to make sure that I'm doing things like exactly perfectly, and they were just stitching. Like I don't know how to explain it. Obviously I don't know what was going through her head when she like did certain things, but for me, like it's beautiful. So I try to bring her work or just like Tatreez that I've acquired to my classes to show my students like, look, this back is not perfect, that's okay, it's still beautiful. These stitches are off. That tells a story, you know. I know like storytelling through Tatreez is a big thing, especially Lena's like, you know, you're very big on that. And I love that. I'm like, this is just one way that these pieces are telling a story. And when you see that, you also start to appreciate your work in that way. And instead of being hung up on yourself when you make a mistake and just being upset and kind of like being like, I don't want to do this anymore, you see it as like part of your story, you know. I tell when my students come to my class and it's not perfect, I'm like, this is your first time doing Tatreez. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. That's part of your story. And that's the only, you know, with mistakes you get better. So
and this actually like ties really nicely into the next question that we have for you, which is, how does Tatreez like share your voice? Like how do you share your voice through Tatreez? I feel like that's such a natural segue into that conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So this has also changed throughout the years. But for a little bit of context, most people that know me or grew up with me, they always saw me as like the quiet girl, like Eman هذه هادية بتحكيش, like she's you know, she's like, I always grew up like that. So I put in my head that I was just shy, and I just like, I don't know, I had nothing to say if I'm being honest.
Oh, Habibi.
But no, like it's all good. But I just like, I always grew up, I wasn't necessarily super confident. And then when I started crafting a lot, started sewing, started Tatreezing, that kind of became my personality, and it gave me like the confidence to, I had something to say, I had something to be passionate about, I had something that I could talk about for hours and really be interested in. So I gained a lot of confidence in that way. And then specifically with Tatreez, when I started making like my own patterns and developing like my own style of Tatreez, it gave me this like new found confidence. It was almost like the difference between you know, a manufactured confidence and true confidence. And for me, it was because I found that with each pattern I designed or with each piece that I made, with whether it was a standalone like Tatreez project or if it was incorporated into like an outfit that I made, more and more it was genuinely telling a piece of my story. And I kind of felt like I had something of my own and my own way to give back to my community, give back to the Tatreez community. And I felt like I have an actual purpose there and I have something to offer. So with that, it just really gave me like, I don't know how else to put it, just like a more like true sense of self and boost of confidence, not just in my like physical ability to like hone a skill, but just like going back to that purpose of like, why am I doing this? What's the point? I lost that a lot with sewing. I was like, there's people that are so much better at this than I am, and they're doing it so much more frequently. Like, what is the point? Like, I kind of lost that. Like I said, especially after I became a mom, I was like, I got better things, like, or not better. I have more important things to do. You know, I can't be like, there's no reason for me to be taking hours out of my day to like try to make a shirt when I have like a child to like take care of. So it kind of lost all that meaning because I didn't have that purpose. So with Tatreez, it brought out all like the best parts of me, in my opinion. And especially, like I said, trying things my own way and doing things in a way that felt true to me really just gave me that confidence that nothing else could have. So I'm really grateful for that. And that's why, you know, that's all I want, like, for any of my students and anybody who takes on any sort of craft, is to have that confidence and to, you know, I am like very protective of my students sometimes, because you have students that get it right away, and they're just like, with the first demonstration of a stitch, they don't need anything else, and they're good, and that's great. But then you have other students that are sitting there and they're like, mine doesn't look like, she's so much further than me, and like I'm not getting it. And I kind of see sometimes people get discouraged, and those are the people that I'm like, no, like, you can do it. You will feel so much better when you do it, and do it in your way. Do it at your pace. No, there's nobody else to compare yourself to but yourself. And I just want everyone to feel that confidence, because that confidence can be, you know, it could be everything to someone. I know a lot of people will be like, it's just a craft, like, what's the big deal? But that confidence really can be the difference between somebody, like, you know, staying in a job that they hate versus going out and trying something new, or like staying in, like, you know, bad relationship, bad friendship, or, you know, feeling like I have something else to offer, I'm going to go do that. So I'm really big on that. I never ever want like someone to come to me and feel discouraged or like they don't know enough after. And so, yeah, that's like my thing now. I just want everyone to feel confident, and I want them to like really be honest about their purpose. A lot of people with Tatreez, especially Palestinians, or, you know, people who are like Middle Eastern, like they say they want Tatreez, they want to take on Tatreez to connect to their roots. And for a lot of people, that's true. For a long time, I thought that's why I was doing Tatreez. But I found like I grew up, you know, with Arabs all around me. I felt already very connected to my roots. So it wasn't necessarily the case for me to just feel like connected. So I encourage people to really like be honest and not to feel bad if it's a craft that genuinely brings you joy and makes you like a better friend, a better parent, a better person in general, then that's enough, you know. Of course, always learn about the culture, learn about the history, but you don't need to do it all. You don't need to, you know, it can sometimes just be there for you, because if we're talking about like Tatreez as a form of resistance, what better resistance than to be like your happiest, most confident Palestinian self, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I love how that comes out so beautifully and so uniquely in like your patterns, for example, because Amani has like a very specific type of pattern as well. And then you, Eman, have like these beautiful, really like floral looking, except geometric at the same time. I don't know how you do it, but you're able to kind of do both of those at the same time. And everyone like has a different taste and they're like, they're attracted to different types of styles. And that can only come out if you're able to like be confident in your voice and be confident in how you want to showcase, your own style. And I think it would be a shame if other people are not expressing themselves as their own unique individual selves. So I love that you're kind of talking about that.
Yeah, everything you just said right there, I agree with 100%. Like one of my favorite things about Instagram and just following all like these talented artists is that, like you said, everybody truly has their own unique style, and that is just, to me, part of like that person showing us a piece of themselves, and a piece of their personality, and telling their own story through their Tatreez. Because like that concept can be kind of vague sometimes. People are like, what does that mean? Storytelling, like telling your story, like telling a story. And I'm like, you just existing.
Yeah.
You just being,
exactly.
and especially with Palestinians in the diaspora, we have a unique story to share. And a lot of the times I feel like I'll speak for my personal experience, but I feel like it pertains to other people as well. But we get kind of hung up on like, this is not traditional. And again, feeling like we're offending somebody. But I don't see it that way. I see it as, this is our experience. We are Palestinians who did not have the luxury and the privilege of growing up in Palestine or liberated Palestine. We're here and we are carrying on our traditions in a way that makes sense for us and is true to us. And I think if you really accept that, you can still participate in like more traditional motifs or patterns or techniques, but you can also make it your own, especially if you're Palestinian. I mean, it's an ever-evolving practice, and like I said, it has historically changed with the times. So wouldn't it make sense to also do that now, in the diaspora? And I just I love seeing everybody's unique styles, and like everyone has a thing, and I love that. And I think that's where it comes in, like kind of learning from each other, but also having the confidence to do things your way and just trying it out. And you will see that eventually your personality and your like what makes you special is going to come through in the tatreez that you do, in the patterns that you design, in the colors you choose, or just in the way that you choose to share it. Some wonderful stitchers on Instagram, like I'm obsessed with the way that they just share their work.
I know.
Yeah.
And they like make it so poetic and like I'm like, you got the right idea there. And so I feel like and with some people like I'm not a color person per se. I struggle with like choosing colors and like putting colors together. And then I see some people, it comes so naturally to them. And I look at that and I'm like, you must be seeing the world differently than me. Like I'm blanking on her name, but there's a stitcher that I've been following recently, and she like seems to be inspired a lot by nature. And to me that says like she's a nature girl. She loves, she walks out and appreciates the sunset a little bit more than I would, and looks at the trees a little bit more. And so it is truly telling a story. Emani, with you and your colors, like you're very monochrome, like I look at your work and I'm like, fabulous. Like
thank you, girl.
That was the goal.
I'm like, I just know she's fabulous. And so I love that. And I think even if you're not physically sharing yourself and like putting yourself on camera, your personality is always going to come through in your work if you make it your own and truly like rely on yourself to hone that craft as your own. So I love that.
Beautifully said. That was, I wholeheartedly agree. And I love the way you put that into words. Okay, Eman, we know that you got a lot going on. You have a lot going on with Hint of Tatreez, between teaching, your own personal projects. What are you working on now that you want to share with the listeners that they can look forward to?
Oh my God. Like you said, a lot. So I am really excited about my in-person workshops. If you're in San Diego, come. Even if you're in just like Southern California, come. I'm trying to do some workshops in LA as well, but
Cool.
San Diego for sure, monthly. As far as like Hint of Tatreez, products and things like that, I'm always working on new patterns and coming out with new Tatreez kits, expanding the Tatreez kit line. I'm very passionate about, if you can't come in person, get a kit and take it home and learn that way. Apparel as well. I started recently doing apparel, and it's been really fun for me to like offer Tatreez in a way that still makes me excited about Tatreez and designing, but I'm not necessarily taking away from my own practice to do it, if that makes sense. So lots going on there. And yeah, I'm excited about all of it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Okay, so one last question for you. Are there any major life lessons that you've gained, or perhaps things you wish you knew about Tatreez when you were first learning about it?
That's a good question. It has taught me a lot. And I think the main thing that I learned from Tatreez, especially over the past few years, especially over the last few months, is there is community where you go look for it. You belong somewhere, right? I have met people through doing Tatreez that come to my workshops or just find me online and just decide to share that, hey, like I'm Arab, I'm Palestinian, but I never felt connected to the culture. I never felt like I belonged. So I pushed that identity aside, and I really want to reclaim that. And they come to the right place because there's a community that's willing to accept you no matter who you are, no matter where you live. There's always a way for you to be your true, authentic self without compromising any parts of your identity. There is a community out there for you. And for me, it's like, who would have thought it was Tatreez? Like, I went from like a heavily vibrant Arab community to not so much, and Tatreez was a way for me to reconnect with that and feel like I belonged somewhere, and that I wasn't different or like, what she got going on. Like, it just it just made sense. So whoever you are, whatever you choose to be, there are people, they might not be around you, but there are people there to accept you wholeheartedly. So I think that's what it's taught me.
Wow. Oh, well, that's something to leave our listeners with.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Eman. That was so beautiful. Really appreciate you having you on and you sharing your words. And one last question, actually. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Hint of Tatreez. You can also check out my website, hintoftatreez.com. I'm kind of on TikTok. I'm trying to get more into it. So you can follow me there. Might be posting more. Who knows? But definitely Instagram, definitely my website. Yeah.
Amazing. And we'll definitely put the links in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me. I was really happy to be here.
Oh,
and
thank you. I'm so glad we had the chance to connect. Yeah.
And like I said, I love your podcast. I love listening. And I love what you're doing. Like again, what I say when everyone does their own thing, like, I mean it. Like, everybody's doing their own thing. It's beautiful. And I love that you did this, like, truly, truly. So
thank you. And we're all here to support and uplift each other because that's what community is all about. Yes. So thank you, Eman. And we will always uplift and support you. And thank you for uplifting and supporting us. We will talk to you soon. Habibti. I'm so glad we were able to get Eman on. That was such a great conversation. it's so funny. I know we've talked about this 1,000,001 times, but every single conversation we have on the podcast, but even just with other Tatreezers in general, like the theme of community comes up over and over again. And it's just interesting to hear for individual people how Tatreez shows up in relation to community for them. And to hear Eman, like, you know, kind of coming to Tatreez so naturally, coming back to Tatreez so naturally. And now she's like building her little Tatreez empire community in San Diego.
I'm so jealous I'm not in San Diego because it looks so beautiful. And she had one about coffee that I like loved. I kind of lived through her like content.
That's so cute. Yeah, maybe we should do a San Diego trip. In a while.
Okay, Amanda, we need to go on like a world tour and just go see.
Who wants to lend us their private jet? Because I don't like to fly any economy, but I also don't like to pay for anything. But
oh my goodness, yeah. No, and also like one more thing just to like mention was like the community thing is always coming up over and over and over again, and yet still. The beauty of Tatreez, like for me always, is that you have like this big group of people who practice this art form, and yet you can still be your own individual self.
Yes.
And I just love that she is so like that has come through for her so vividly, and I just love that she's sharing it with the world because I'm a huge fan of her designs, of her approach, of like the things that she talks about on her platform. And it's just, I don't know, there's just something so beautiful about like still maintaining this connection to Palestine and this big broader community, but then coming to it as your own individual unique self. And like that's part of why you have this beautiful communities, because you have all these individuals. No,
I like the way she spoke about it, and like she referenced, you know, this stitcher, like I can see from their patterns and their stitching, they really like nature. And, you know, like this person, like, oh, they like color, so they're probably very vibrant and stuff. Like I love that approach and that viewpoint. And I think that's what's so special about having all these different conversations with different Tatreezers is just like understanding how they viewed Tatreez and what Tatreez means to them and how it shaped their lives. So it was great, and I'm sure that we will continue conversations with Eman.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So good. Thank you guys again for listening to another episode of Tatreez Talk. We want to hear about your own Tatreez journey, so please share your stories with us at tatreeztalk@gmail.com, and we might have you on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform, and be sure to leave a 5-star review. You can follow me at Lina Stolb and Amani at Minamani, and of course, follow the pod at Tatreez Talk. Until next time, Stitchers.